Okay, students, is my screen visible? Like, are you able to see the screen? Just give me a thumbs up if you're able to see my screen. Okay, thank you. So today we are going to cover the chapter, how do organisms reproduce? Okay, we know that already we have done all the different life process. We have done nutrition, we have done respiration, transportation, excretion. Apart from that, yesterday we have done completed. Today we are going to do a process which is not life for the continuity of our life. Okay, so today we'll start with how do organisms reproduce. Now the first question, okay, these are the important points which we are going to discuss today. What is reproduction? What are the different modes of reproduction? Asexual reproduction, sexual reproduction in plants, pollination, and sexual reproduction in humans. These are the few topics we are going to discuss today. So first, let's understand what is reproduction. So students, just tell me what is reproduction. You can reply in your chat box. What is reproduction? Waiting for the reply. What is reproduction? Okay, very good. So reproduction is the process of producing new individual. Just writing that producing new individual will make reproduction, the whole definition, half correct. Okay. So the whole correct definition will be producing new individual of its own kind. So reproduction means producing new individual of its own kind. If a cat reproduces, the cat will produce kittens only. Okay. It cannot produce puppy. So you can see here a dog, when it reproduces puppies. Okay. So it's a process of producing new individual of its own kind. Okay. Similarly, if a human reproduces, it will be a human baby. Okay. So this is what is known as reproduction. Now, this reproduction is very useful because it helps to maintain the continuity of life. You might have been reading in newspapers several times. We have seen that this was a last species, which was means after the death of this species, the whole of that species has been extinct. Okay, so this kind of news usually come in newspaper. That's because they fail to reproduce. Okay, they fail to reproduce in their natural environment. It happens because of that. Now, in case of humans, the reproductive rate is really good. Hence, we have now, like, we have almost crossed 7 billion people, okay, all over the world. Now, we'll see what are the different modes of reproduction. Okay, reproduction, we have understood it's a process of producing new individual of its own kinds. Now, what are the different modes of reproduction? There are majorly two modes of reproduction. Okay, reproduction is of two types. One is asexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction means here only one parent is involved in the formation of new individuals. Okay, only one parent is required for the formation of new individual. Such kind of reproduction is known as asexual reproduction. Okay, usually definitions are asked. What is okay, define asexual reproduction. So what is asexual reproduction? Formation of new individual by only one parent. Okay, and that parent, usually we don't define it as a male parent or a female parent because it's not a sexual reproduction, so it's not important to define it as male parent and female parent. Whereas sexual reproduction is the second mode of reproduction. Okay, here what happens? Here two parents of different sex are involved in the production of a new individual. It happens in mostly multicellular organisms like plants, animals. Okay, you'll be finding sexual reproduction more common, whereas unicellular organism like bacteria, amoeba, even a few simple multicellular organisms, okay, like hydra or fungi, okay, in them you can find this asexual reproduction. But in major higher organisms, you'll be finding sexual reproduction. Here, two parents are involved in the production of offspring. So is it clear what is the difference between asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction? Just give me a thumbs up. Okay. Now let's move on to the detail of asexual reproduction. We have completed one topic, that is reproduction and the modes of reproduction. Now we'll move on to asexual reproduction. So you can see there are different types of asexual reproduction. Okay, first we'll study about fission. Now, what the term mean, fission? Fission means what? You might have heard in physics, two kind of term you might have heard, fusion and fission. Okay, in biology also you'll hear the same term, fission and fusion. So what is, yes, it's like fission and fusions are both opposite to each other. Okay, fission means breaking, division. Okay, and fusion means combining. So what happens here, you can see here one mother amoeba, it enlarges. So the mother amoeba enlarges. When it enlarges, first the nucleus enlarges and the nucleus divides. Later on, the whole cytoplasm divides and two daughter amoebas will be formed. So once this daughter amoebas grow up and attains the mother amoeba size, again the same cycle repeat. Okay, so the cycle keep on repeating. This is known as fission. Now, because from one mother cell, two daughter cells are formed, we call this kind of fission as binary fission. Binary means two. Okay, binary fission. There are multiple fission also. Multiple fission means one mother cell divide to form many daughter cells. Okay, so is it fine? Is it clear what is meant by fission? Next, we'll move on to regeneration. Now, what is regeneration? What is regeneration? So this is unique in few organisms. Okay, in few organisms, it is very unique. Regeneration is very unique in few organisms. What happens in this organism is, whichever part they lose, whichever body part they lose, they develop the lost body part. Like you can see in planaria, the planaria was, the body has been cut into two. Okay, the upper half and the lower half. And you can see in the bottom figure, the upper half develops its lower half and the lower half develops its upper half. So this kind of reproduction is known as regeneration. It is not only seen in planaria, it is also seen in hydra, it is seen in starfish. Okay, in our body also there's an organ which can regenerate. Can you name the organ which can regenerate? Our whole body cannot regenerate. Okay, our whole body don't have the capacity to regenerate, you know. Yes, okay, there's we got the answer. I want everyone to reply. It's the liver. Okay, liver is the organ that regenerates. Okay, so we have studied two. One is fission and the other one is regeneration. Then come budding. Now budding, what happens here is, here from a mother body, a small projection arises. You can see here in hydra, you can see that a small projection arises first, and that projection become large. It just enlarges. So once it become a proper age, once the hydra or whatever offspring or daughter cells grows, it just gets separated from the mother's body. Okay, it gets separated from the mother body. So it arises as a bud, a small projection, we call it as bud, and later on develops and grow as a new individual. So such kind of reproduction is known as budding. It is seen in hydra as well as it is seen in yeast. Okay, so majorly question is asked about hydra, that what are the two different kind of reproduction seen in hydra. One is budding and the other one is regeneration. I have told you that hydra can also undergo regeneration like planaria. Okay, now next kind of asexual reproduction is fragmentation. So in fragmentation, what happened, if this is a organism, when due to some external forces, if the organism is cut into two or more pieces, all these two or more pieces grows and forms new individual. So if it is cut into three or more pieces or two or more pieces, all these pieces grows and form new individuals. So three individual will be formed if there are three pieces. Okay, so that pieces are known as fragments. My voice is clear. Do I need to increase my voice? Okay. So you can see here, so this kind of reproduction is very common in water, aquatic algae. Okay, in Spirogyra, it is very common because water flows, when water flows due to water current, because they are very filamentous, they are very thin, the water currents break them into many pieces. And when they get broken into many pieces, there's no problem for them. They just multiply their cells, and whatever many pieces they have got divided, those many organisms will be formed. Okay, so it's very common in Spirogyra. It's a green algae which is very common in ponds and all. You'll be finding it growing in places, okay, marshy places and all. Now next one is spore formation. Spore formation is common in fungi. In multicellular organism like fungi, spore formation is common. Now in fungi, you'll be finding one thing. This part of the body we call it as hyphae, which is thin filamentous structure, which we call it as hyphae. Usually these hyphae are not visible to our naked eyes, but this part is usually visible to our naked eyes. Okay, if you just keep a bread for a long time, you'll be finding that green color or brown color patches coming up on the leaf. That's because of the spores that fungus has produced. So what this fungi has a thin thread-like structure, which we call it as hyphae. From that thin structure, one vertical structure arises, and above the vertical structure, there'll be a round structure, which we call it as sporangium. Inside this sporangium, there are small spores. And when this sporangium bursts open, the spores comes out. Each spore will give rise to a new fungi. So here also we are seeing only one parent is there and the spores are formed. Okay, so this is also a type of asexual reproduction. Okay, now coming to plants, I told you that in higher plants we see sexual reproduction, but not all higher plants undergo sexual reproduction. Okay, there are certain means sometimes what happens is that some plants take a lot of time to flower to fruit. Okay, so such kind of plant, usually we cannot wait for such kind of plant to propagate by itself. Okay, so what we do is we go for vegetative propagation. Even nature goes for vegetative propagation. Okay, just a minute. Okay, so even nature goes for vegetative propagation. So what happens here? You can just see when a potato is kept for a long time, there are eyes in the potato. So from the eyes of the potato, new buds start to arise. That is, new plants start to arise. So that kind of propagation where flower is not taking part in reproduction, but any other body parts such as root, leaf, stem, these parts are taking part in reproduction. We call them as vegetative propagation. Nowadays, we are doing this in laboratory also, and that we do is by taking a small portion, small tissue, by taking a tissue, we grow a new plant. So that kind of process is known as tissue culture. Now, is it possible for a human cell to grow into a new organism? If I give a human tissue, if I take a tissue from my hand and try to propagate in the laboratory, will a human grow? Is it possible? Just think, if I'm just taking a cell from my, if I'm taking a small tissue from my body and trying to grow, is it possible for a cell to grow into a whole human? No, it's not possible. But for plants, it's very easy. Okay, plants, if we take a tissue from a leaf, the plant will produce the whole, plant part will be produced. That is, root, stem, branches, everything will be produced from the leaf tissue. That's because the cells of plants have the capacity to produce all the different types of cells. But the human cells do not have, or the animal cells do not have the capacity to produce all the different types of cells. That is why it cannot be grown. Okay. So I hope it is clear. So this was about the different types of vegetative propagation. Now you can see here there's a question. Draw a label diagram in proper sequence to show budding in hydra. So you have to draw a diagram in proper sequence to show budding in hydra. Okay, so first what you'll be showing, you'll be showing a small projection. Then you will be showing that the projection is enlarging. Okay, and finally what happens after enlarging the projection? When it is completely grown, it just detached from the parent body. Okay, so this diagram you need to draw while showing the budding. See, one more thing, all the diagrams, that is fission diagram, or I don't think so regeneration diagram is asked, but fission diagram, budding diagram, these diagrams are asked. So refer the diagrams, okay? Refer all the diagrams, as well as I have told you in previous chapter also, life process and control and coordination, there also you have to refer the diagrams. Now name and explain the two modes of asexual reproduction observed in hydra. So what are the two modes of asexual reproduction seen in Hydra? Come on, just quickly answer me. What are the two modes of asexual reproduction? I have already told you. Two modes of asexual reproduction seen in Hydra. Okay, very good. So all the answers are correct. So one is budding and the other one is regeneration. Okay, one is budding and the other one is regeneration. Now, what is vegetative propagation? Propagation of new organism by vegetative parts. Okay, vegetative parts like leaf, stem, root is known as vegetative propagation. Now, this is important. What are the two advantages of this technique? If you are going for vegetative propagation, just imagine that you have a hibiscus plant in your garden. Okay, so everyone means mostly it's very common and most of them have this hibiscus plant in the garden. So now you want to propagate this hibiscus plant and you are planning to do it in vegetative propagation way because you haven't seen the hibiscus seeds there. Okay, so what two advantages you'll be getting if you're propagating? What two advantages you will get from this technique? Just try to answer what two advantages we'll get. Okay, so I have got the answers. So first thing, because they are propagated from only one parent, propagated from only one parent, the gene will be same. There will be no variation. Okay, so the new plant will be similar to the old plant. Okay, similar to the old plant, not like every branches, every leaf will be similar, but the gene makeup will be same. The second advantage, we can propagate very easily. Okay, farmers don't wait for seeds to come for few plants. Okay, they propagate it by vegetative way. In case of bamboos and all, you cannot wait for a flower to come. So in those cases, the propagation becomes very easy when we go for vegetative mode of propagation, because you need to take only a branch and cut it into 10 pieces. You can grow 10 plants there. Okay, but a seed will grow only into one plant. Okay, so it's very time consuming for the seed to germinate, all those things. But here you just need to take a branch, cut it into few pieces and grow. So it's very easy to cultivate. Okay. Okay, so I have got many answers. So only two advantages has been asked. You can give on whatever advantages. As you have seen, some flowers, some plants, as I told you in bamboos and all, they flower very late. Okay, they flower after many years. So in that cases and all, this vegetative propagation in bananas also, you might have seen, if there is banana in your garden, you don't have to wait for the flowers. Banana don't wait for the flowers. From the suckers only, from the stem only, the new banana plant arises. Okay, so propagation becomes very easy in those cases. Now the next question: which one of the two multicellular organisms, Pyrogyra and Planaria, reproduce by regeneration, and why? So which one, Spirogyra or Planaria? Which one reproduces by regeneration? Yes, we know that it's Planaria, because Pyrogyra reproduce by fragmentation. Okay, and why? Because they have special cells that can produce the whole organism. They have that special cells. Spirogyra lack those regenerative cells, hence they cannot produce by regeneration, but Planaria has that special cell which can form all parts of the body. Give an example of any other organism which can also reproduce by the same process. Again, the same question is being asked. So can you name any other organism that can produce by same process like regeneration? Yes. So it is Hydra. Okay, you can say it as Hydra. You can say it as starfish. Okay, these are the different organisms that can reproduce by the same process. So this one is also simple. Now define fragmentation. What is fragmentation? This is also a question. Define fragmentation. So it can be define fission, define budding, all this can come. Okay, so define fragmentation. What is fragmentation? What is fragmentation? Fragmentation means what? Breaking of an individual. Okay, breaking of an individual or a filament into two or more pieces is known as fragmentation. Okay, A living filament, either spirogyra filament, it gets broken down into 2 or more pieces. That is known as fragmentation. Okay. And during fragmentation, this each fragment, whatever fragments has been formed, each fragments develop into a new organism. Okay. Now, the process of spore formation take place in many simple multicellular organisms. We have seen that it takes place in different organisms. Name the organism using this process to reproduce. Which organism use this process to reproduce? That is, the process of spore formation is used by which organism to reproduce? Quickly, which organism reproduced by spore formation? So the organism that reproduce by spore formation is fungus. Okay. So fungi is the organism that reproduce by spore formation, and they have asked, and reproductive and non-reproductive part of such organism. What is the reproductive part and non-reproductive part? The reproductive part, I told you, it is sporangium. Inside the sporangium, we find spores. Okay, you can note down the organism that undergoes spore formation is fungi. The reproductive part is sporangium, and the non-reproductive part is hyphae. Okay, hyphae, H-Y-P-H. Okay, it should be P-H, not F. Okay. So hyphae. And the organism's name, if it is asked, name the organism, it should be rhizopus, or you can write it as bread mold. Okay, bread mold, or in short, we call it as rhizopus. List 2 benefits of an organism that reproduce through spores. What are the 2 benefits of this organism? What are the 2 benefits of this organism who produce by spores? Okay, first benefits is like they produce a number of spores. Okay, more number of spores will be produced in one sporangium. Okay, so more number of individual can be produced if these spores grows. One sporangium contains thousands of spores. So you can see that thousands of individual can be produced once this spores grows. And another thing, these spores are very resistant. Okay, these spores do not get damaged very fast. They can survive any means whatever unfavorable condition they have, like if there is lack of water, lack of food, they can survive. So whenever a favorable condition come, they grow. So this individual, they don't have to worry that their offsprings are not getting produced, because they produce lot of spores, and these spores germinate very fast and they can survive in any unfavorable condition. And whenever favorable condition comes, they just develop into new organisms. So I hope this question is also clear. So these are the types of questions that are being asked from asexual reproduction. Now we'll move on to sexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction, there are 2 types we are going to study. One is in plants and the other one is in humans. Okay, so sexual reproduction in flowering plant, that we'll be studying. Next, we'll be studying sexual reproduction in humans. These are the 2 different kinds of sexual reproduction we'll be studying. Okay. So first, let's begin with sexual reproduction in plants. So flowering plants we'll start with. Now first, let's see the structure of a flower. If you just see a structure of a flower, if there is hibiscus in your garden, just try to look at the structure of the flower. So a flower has 4 important parts, okay, of which 2 are very important. We call it as reproductive part, and 2 are means we can say that it's an accessory part. It's not that important, but yet it's very required for the reproductive part. Okay, so one is the sepal. Sepal, the first one is the sepal. Sepal are usually green in color and they help in photosynthesis. Not only that, when the plant is in a bud stage, they help to protect the plant by when the flower is in the bud stage, they help to protect the flower. Another is the petal. Petal, if you see, petal are very colorful. This colorful petals are to attract the pollinators. Okay, when plant in flowers, there are pollinators required to transfer pollen from the anther to the stigma, and this petals helps to attract the pollinator. We know not only pollinator, we also get attracted, right? Seeing a very red color flower or pink color flower or any other color flowers, we get very attracted towards the flower. Okay, we try to pluck that flower. That's because of the petal. Okay, petal attract not only us but also its pollinator. Its main aim is to attract the pollinator. So these are the two helping parts of the flower. But the two important parts are male reproductive organ, which we call it as stamen. If you see a stamen has a small bulge-like structure at the top. We call them as anther. And there is a small filament, long filament, which we call it as filament. Okay, long, thin thread-like structure, which we call it as filament. So filament is just to hold the anther, it is just to hold the anther. Anther is the one which has pollen grain inside. Okay, anther is the one which has pollen grain inside, and that is the male reproductive cell, we can say, the pollen grain. Okay, so male reproductive organ is the stamen. Stamen has anther and filament. Anther is the one which contains the pollen grain. Similarly, now here at the center, you can see a single structure, that is the female reproductive organ, which we call it as carpel, or it can also be called as pistil. Okay, if you're writing pistil, that is also correct. If you're writing carpel, that is also correct. Okay. Now, carpel has three parts. The top one, you can see the finger-like projection has been arised, the feathery appearance, that is called the stigma. That is the landing site for the pollen. Whenever pollen falls, it's just drop on the stigma. Okay. Then there is a tube-like long structure. This we call it as style. And then at the bottom, there's a bulged-like structure, which we call it as ovary. And inside the ovary, there is ovule, which is a female reproductive organ. Okay, reproductive part. So is it clear? The flower part is clear? Is the flower part clear? The parts of the flower? Okay. So now let's move on to pollination. Now, I told you that pollens are the male reproductive structure of a flower. Okay, male reproductive cell of a flower. Similarly, the ovule are the female reproductive cell. So what happens sometimes, the flowers do not want the pollen from their, plant to fall on their stigma only. They want it to get transferred from one flower to another. So there are two different types of pollination. One is like self-pollination, and the other one is like cross-pollination. So pollination is of two types. Self-pollination. First thing, what is pollination? Pollination is the transfer of pollen from the anther to the stigma. This is what you need to write. Okay. Pollination is the transfer of pollen from the anther to the stigma. This is the only definition you can write. But they may ask about self-pollination and cross-pollination. Self-pollination is very simple. The anther will produce pollen, and the pollen will fall onto the stigma of the same flower, okay, of the same flower. That kind of pollination is known as self-pollination. And there is cross-pollination. In cross-pollination, what happens? Pollens are produced from one anther, and then it falls onto the stigma of the another flower, okay, not on the same flower, but of the another flower of another plant. Okay, so that kind of pollination is known as cross-pollination. Now, for cross-pollination to occur, just imagine that in your garden, there's a hibiscus plant, and in your neighbor garden, there's another hibiscus plant. Okay, if it is not hibiscus plant, then just imagine it's a mango tree. So there is one mango tree in your garden, there's another mango tree in your neighbor's garden. So who will take the pollen from your garden to the neighbor garden, or who will bring the pollen from your neighbor garden to your garden? So that work we won't do, right? We never do that work. Sometimes we do, we call it as artificial pollination. But usually there are agents that do this work. And that agents are wind, water, insects. Okay, if the flower are very colorful, insects are the agents. If the flower are very small and light, wind are the agent. And if the flower is in water, then water is the agent that takes the pollen from one plant to the another. So is it clear? What is cross-pollination? What is pollination? What is self-pollination? And what are the different agents of pollination? I hope it is clear for all. Now, let's see. Which of the following flower will have possibility of self-pollination? Self-pollination, one more thing you need to be clear, self-pollination will take place only in bisexual flowers. Bisexual flowers are flowers that have both male and female organ in them, okay? There are unisexual flowers also, which have only male or only female organs, okay? So if it is a bisexual flowers, only then self-pollination will have higher chances. Now mustard. Can anyone tell me mustard is a bisexual flower or a unisexual flower? Okay. So bisexual flower, it's a bisexual flower. That is, it has male and female, both the parts in it. Papaya is a unisexual flower. Watermelon is a unisexual flower. Hibiscus is a bisexual flower. So the higher chances of self-pollination will be in bisexual flower. Okay. So it will be mustard and hibiscus that will have higher chances of pollination. Okay. Self-pollination. Watermelon, all the kinds of melon, okay, pumpkin or different kinds of bottle gourd or any kinds of bitter gourd or anything, most of them have this unisexual flowers only. Okay, so mustard and hibiscus have bisexual flowers, so self-pollination is higher in mustard and hibiscus. Now list two reproductive parts of a bisexual flower. What are the two reproductive parts of a bisexual flower? What are the two reproductive parts of a bisexual flower? Bisexual flower means it has a male part as well as the female part, right? So the male part is the stamen and the female part is the carpel. These are the two reproductive part of a bisexual flower. Okay, so I have got a lot of answers here. So it's stamen and carpel. Now this was one question. Next. Define the term pollination. Pollination, I have already told you, it's a transfer of pollen from the anther to the stigma. Differentiate between self-pollination and cross-pollination. I think now you can do differentiate it, right? Self-pollination means transfer of pollen from the anther to the stigma of the same flower. Cross-pollination means transfer of pollen from the anther to the stigma of a different flower of a different plant. Okay. Now, what is the significance of pollination? That we are going to study next. Okay. Significance of pollination. Due to pollination only, the male gamete can fuse with the female gamete and produce a seed or fruit. Okay. Now, same question again in the next, means another year also it was asked, define pollination, explain the different types of pollination, list two agents of pollination. This is an extra thing which is asked. List two agents of pollination. I have told you three agents of pollination: wind, water, and insects. So only two agents has been asked here. How does suitable pollination leads to fertilization? So that we'll see here how suitable pollination leads to fertilization. So you can see here, once the pollen has been fallen into the stigma, once the pollen has been fallen into the stigma, if it is a correct pollen, if a hibiscus pollen falls on a hibiscus stigma, then it is the correct pollen. Okay. If a rose pollen falls on a hibiscus stigma, it will not grow. So the pollen should be proper. So once the correct pollen falls into the stigma, the pollen start to produce a tube-like structure. It will start to produce a tube-like structure. Now, in this tube-like structure, the cell which was the nucleus which was present in the inside the pollen slowly start to move from the tube. Now, you can see from the tube, the nucleus is moving. That nucleus, we call it as male gamete. That male gamete goes down, and here in the ovule, there's an egg cell. So here you'll be finding an ovule. In the ovule, here at the center, you'll be finding an egg cell. So the male gamete which is coming through the pollen tube goes and fuses with the egg cell. It fuses with the egg cell forming zygote. Okay, so that structure we call it as zygote. Okay, it forms zygote. So what it happens, the egg cell will be present here in the ovule. The male gamete comes and fuses with the egg cell forming a zygote. So once the zygote is formed, the zygote later on develops into embryo, and later on it gets converted into seed. Okay. And the whole ovary, this whole ovary changes into a fruit. After fertilization, the zygote develops into embryo and later on into a whole seed. Means this whole structure, this whole ovule develop into a seed, and the whole ovary develops into a fruit. So you have to be clear, there's a ovary, Inside the ovary, there's a ovule. So once the male gamete fertilizes the egg cell develops into an embryo, and this whole ovule develops into a seed. So the whole ovule develops into a seed and the ovary develops into a fruit. Hence, when you cut an mango, if you can see, when you cut a mango, you'll be finding the whole structure first, round structure, and inside the center, you'll be finding the seed. So that center seed is the ovule, which was developed into seed, and the side portion is the ovary, which was developed into a fruit. So this question is usually asked, which organ develops into what? So is it clear? Now we'll see sexual reproduction in humans. So usually in fertilization, they ask what develops into what? Ovary develops into dash and ovule develops into dash. So ovary develops into a fruit and ovule develops into a seed. So that kind of question will be asked. Okay. Now sexual reproduction in humans. In humans, you can see sexual reproduction take place after a particular age. Okay. That age, when we attain that age, sexual reproduction take place. So when this sexual reproduction starts, the process of sexual reproduction begins in human, we call it that as an puberty stage. Okay, it takes place during the adolescence age, and that we call the process, we call it as puberty. So you can see when puberty hits male and female both, girls and boys, there are many changes that take place during this puberty phase. Okay, just now I think so you all are in 10th grade. You all know that you all have just crossed that puberty age, and you all know how many changes has been taken place in your body. Okay, a few changes are similar, means it is same to male as well as female, but a few changes are different, specific for girls and boys. Okay, so here what are the similar changes? Let's see. Increase in the height. Increase in the height is similar to boy as well as to girl. Okay, so both boys and girls, they show a rapid increase in the height. This is the stage where the ultimate, what will be the height of a male or a female later on at the adult stage will be decided in this stage. Okay, then growth of sex organs. Growth of sex organs, that is testes and ovaries. The growth of sex organ takes place, and this sex organ become functional. Till now they were not functional. They were there in the body, but they were in a dormant state. They were not functional. Now during puberty, during that 10 to 12 years, they become functional. Okay, now pitch of the voice in boys as well as in girls, both pitch of the voice changes. Boys mainly you will be finding a major change in the voice. In boys the voice become deep and little loud. In girls, the voice becomes sharp. It will be like shrill voice. If you hear a girl's voice, you'll be finding a shrill in your ear, right? So that's because the voice gets sharp. Whereas the boy's voice, it gets a little more loud instead of getting sharp. Okay. Now, facial hairs. Now, this is few similarities are there, few differences are there. In boys, facial hair, like beard, mustache starts to grow. But in case of beard and mustache starts to grow in boys, in girls you will not find that facial hair. But the hairs under the armpits and under the genital organ is common for both. Okay, in boys also under the armpit hairs start to grow. In girls also hairs starts to grow under the armpit and inside the genital, near the genital organ, external genital organ also the hairs start to grow. Okay. Then glands in the skin become more active. It is there in both boys and girls. Okay, glands in the skin means the oil gland, the sebaceous gland in the skin become more active, and we'll start, suddenly, usually what happens, this is the main reason of worry for most of the boys and girls, because suddenly their face start to produce lot of pimples. Okay, that's because lot of oil is getting produced, and this oil helps to accumulate lot of bacteria, and because of that, lot of acne or pimples can be seen. And this, it's very easy, it's a not to worry situation, because that much of oil is being produced. You just need to wash it, cleanse it. Okay, then there is sperm production start. Now this is different in male and female. In boys, production of sperm start from the testes. In girls, ovum production start from the ovary. Now in girls, the ovums are counted. So each month one ovum starts to mature, whereas in boys, the sperms keep on producing. So here what happens, the constant production of sperms take place. There is no limited number of sperms. Okay. Then in boys, the body shape changes. In boys, you'll be finding the Y-shaped body. Y-shaped body, the shoulder enlarges more and the waist become narrower. Shoulders will be broad, waist will be narrower. Okay, so a Y-shaped body will be formed in boys, whereas in girls, you'll be finding the breast develop and the waist get reduced and hip develops. Okay, so a wavy kind of structure will be formed in girls. Okay, so is it clear? The changes during puberty, is it clear? And I know all of you have gone through it, and I hope that this stage was really very means a lot of hormonal changes also take place in this stage. Some people may fear what changes are taking place, but it should be normal. We all should take it as normal, because this takes place in everyone goes through this stage of puberty. Okay, now let's see the male reproductive system and the female reproductive system. Now the male reproductive system is usually seen below the abdomen. Okay, below the abdomen, below our intestine, just below the abdomen, male reproductive system can be seen. What here you can see that there are two testes. A pair of testes are seen in male reproductive structure, and these testes are usually covered by a sac-like structure. These testes are usually covered by a sac-like structure. That sac-like structure, we call it as scrotum. Okay, we call it as scrotum. And this sac-like structure is little away from the body. Okay, it's not attached to the male body. It's away from the male body. Can you just tell me why this is away from the male body? Why the testis is away from the, body, and it's not attached to the body? Can you just tell me? Anyone can reply? Okay, I got one. Okay, so usually we know our body temperature stands between 37 degrees Celsius, our body temperature, normal body temperature. But for the sperms to produce, 37 degrees Celsius is not the temperature required by the testis to produce sperms. Okay, so sperms require a little low temperature, that is 2 to 3 degrees Celsius should be less than the body temperature. Hence, what happened, the scrotal sac is kept away from the body so that the body heat, that temperature which is required for the sperms to produce, should be there. Okay, it should not get contact with the body heat. Okay, hence it is kept a little away from the body. Now, inside this scrotal sac, you'll be finding testes. In this testis, the sperms are produced. Okay, sperms are produced in this testis. Testis is the organ that produces the sperm. And in case of male sperm, you'll be finding that it has a head, it has a small neck, okay, and there's a tail. Okay, so this kind of structure, a head, a neck, and a tail will be there. The tail is for the sperm to move. Sperm has motility, sperm can move. That's because of the tail. So once the sperms are produced in the testes, the sperms travel through the vas deferens. From the vas deferens, the sperm travel and it reaches the urethra. This is the urethra. Okay, it reaches the urethra. In male, you'll be finding urethra is a common passage for the ejection of sperms as well as for the ejection of urine. Urethra is the common passage, okay, for the ejection of sperm and the ejection of urine. So vas deferens carry the sperms to the urethra. There you'll be finding seminal vesicles which will secrete lot of nutritive substance, so that this sperms, this sperm will be very active and they can actually swim through the whole length of the urethra, as well as if it goes into the female reproductive part, it has to reach the fallopian tube. So that energy is given by this seminal vesicle. Then there are prostate gland and bulbourethral gland. These glands also give lubrication and it makes the sperm little alkaline, because the vagina is little acidic. So the sperm should be little alkaline to bear the acidic nature of the vagina, female vagina. Okay. So is it clear the reproductive system or the reproductive structure of male? These 4 parts you have to write, and the function of this 4 part has to be written. First, testes produce sperms. Vas deferens carry the sperm from the testis to the urethra. Prostate gland, it produces alkaline secretion, which actually protect the sperms from the acidic environment of the vagina. Then seminal vesicle, it produces nutritive secretion, it called semen. Okay, it produces semen with which the sperms mixes and it give bulkiness to the sperms. Okay, so this was about the male reproductive structure. Then we have the female reproductive structure. If you see the female reproductive structure, they also, like testes, they have 2 ovaries. Okay, so testes were 2. Similarly here ovaries are also 2. Okay, and they are also located near the below that abdomen region. Okay, and just what we say, below all the intestine and all, it's located at the end of the abdomen. Okay, now here also they have 2 ovaries. Each ovary will produce ovum. The ovums are already decided. Each female has thousands of ovum, and that is decided. Female body never keep on producing ovum like male testes keep on producing sperm, but in female the ovums are counted. Okay, so here ovary is there. There are 2 ovaries, left side, right side. Then there's a fallopian tube. This is most important. This is where the fertilization takes place. That is, when the sperm enters the vagina, the sperm has to travel through the uterus to reach the fallopian tube, and in the fallopian tube, the fertilization takes place. Once the fertilization has taken place, the fertilized zygote comes and get implanted in the uterus. It get implanted in the uterus. This is the walls of the uterus, and I'll change the color. So this is the walls of the uterus. So once the ovum get fertilized, it get implanted into the uterus. Okay, so here in the uterus, the development of the zygote take place. It forms embryo. Later on, it forms the fetus. Now this is the structure which actually act as a barrier between the uterus and the vagina. Okay, that region is known as cervix. Okay, then we have the vagina. This is where the penis enters and leaves the sperm. This region where the penis enters and leave the sperm. So sperms have to travel from here to the fallopian tube to get fertilized with the ovum. So is it clear? The female reproductive structure is clear. The questions are, mostly they ask the question about the where does fertilization occurs in a female body. Okay, where does fertilization occur? So fertilization occurs in fallopian tube. The other name of fallopian tube, you can call it as oviduct. Okay, you can say it as fallopian tube or oviduct. Now, this female uterus, you'll be finding it's a inverted pear-shaped structure. Now, this walls of the uterus, usually what happens every month, this walls of the uterus get thickened to, prepare itself to receive the zygote, the fertilized zygote. So it gets thickened so that the embryo develop there, and it can provide a very cushiony environment to the growing embryo. But if the ovum doesn't get fertilized, this walls ruptures. Okay, this walls break down, and when it break down, it flows out as menstrual flow. Okay, so here you can see. Okay, we'll first answer a few questions. Mention one function each of the following organ in human male reproductive system. Testis. What is the function of testis? Quick, what is the function of testis? Reply quickly. What is the function of testis? Okay, very good. So it's like the production of sperms. Testis helps in the production of sperm. Now, what is the function of scrotum? What is the function of scrotum? We have seen the function of testis. What is the function of scrotum? Yes, scrotum helps to provide a required optimum temperature. What is required for the sperm production? That is done by scrotum. Then come vas deferens. What is the function of vas deferens? Vas deferens helps to carry sperm from the testis to the urethra. Okay, then we have prostate glands. Prostate glands produce the secretions which helps the sperms to move easily through the vagina. Okay, now name the type of germ cells which is motile. Which germ cell is motile? Which germ cell is motile? Motile means moving. Okay, which germ cell can move? Yes, sperm, that is male germ cells. Okay, male germ cells can move, so that is motile. Which germ cell can store food? Now you can see one thing. Ovary produces ovum. Ovum is much larger than a sperm. Okay, ovum has a nucleus and it's much larger than a sperm. If you see, compare a sperm and an ovum, a sperm will be only this much in front of a ovum. Ovum is much larger. So ovum is the one that store food in them. Okay, sperm cannot store food because sperm is very small. It has only one nucleus and a few mitochondria so that it can help the sperm to move. Whereas ovum is the one that store the food inside them. Okay, so store food, ovum, motility, sperm. Okay, next you can see here, once I told you, once it gets fertilized, once the ovum gets fertilized with the coming sperm, it usually gets fertilized here in the fallopian tube. Okay, and then it slowly start to move down. It slowly start to move down and it's get attached to the uterus. Now you can see when it get attached to the uterus wall covers the whole of the embryo or the zygote. Okay, it covers the whole of the embryo. So this covering, that tissue that helps to cover the whole of the embryo, we call them as placenta. This tissue is known as placenta, and placenta, you'll be finding in one side of the placenta, there'll be many blood vessels coming from the mother body. And in another side of the placenta, you'll be finding lot of finger-like projection. So this blood vessels, it brings food, water, whatever means gases, whatever is required by the embryo, it brings everything and it gives it to the embryo. So embryo is seen attached here. Okay, embryo is seen attached to the placenta. So whatever requirement is there to the embryo, the placenta brings and give it to the embryo. Similarly, from the embryo, whatever is not required by the embryo, it's given back to the placenta. So it takes the blood vessels which are there near all the waste materials, all the waste gases or the waste materials which are produced by the embryo is given back to the placenta. So placenta is very important. It is the connecting, it's the connecting tissues. It connects the mother body to the fetus. Okay, it brings all the required nutrients to the fetus and it takes back all the waste material from the fetus to the mother's body. Hence, virus, it can bring virus to the fetus. So what happens? Not bacteria and all cannot travel through placenta, but virus can do. So AIDS, usually if the mother has AIDS, the baby can get AIDS because virus can easily get transported through placenta. Okay, but any bacterial disease will not get to the fetus. If a mother has typhoid or if a mother has some other bacterial disease, the baby or the fetus won't get it because the bacteria cannot travel through the placenta. So is it clear? Now, as I told you, I have explained this. Usually uterus, they form a... Okay. So usually uterus, what happened? Uterus form a thick layer. So uterus will be waiting for the embryo to come and get implanted in the uterus wall. But when the fertilization won't take place, when the fertilization doesn't take place, this uterus layer break off. Now this uterus layer, you can see here, there are a lot of blood vessels, covering this uterus lining. So when this uterus lining sheds off, it sheds off all the blood vessels also. So blood starts to flow. This process is known as menstruation. Okay, the blood starts to flow. It flows up to 5 to 7 days, and then the uterus lining become normal. Again, the uterus will start the same process for the another month. Okay, another ovum. Okay, so it will again start to grow thick. Similarly, and until 28 days, the uterus completely, the walls of the uterus completely grows. And again, if the ovary is not if the zygote or the embryo is not getting implanted, it shuts off and menstrual cycle start. So it's a 28-day cycle. The whole process take place in this way. The fertilization, if it take place, then it will go to pregnancy. If the fertilization doesn't take place, the uterus lining shuts off and menstrual cycle occur, and it's a very natural process. Okay, it's a very natural process. Now the next thing is reproductive health. It's very important. Okay, reproductive health is very important. You know, in India itself, India is a very small country. Okay, India is very small. It's the 7th largest country. Here, compared to all other China or Russia, you can see India is very small. But the population in India, it's in the second. India is the second largest, population, populous country, we can say, after China. Okay, so India has 1.2 billion people. So this is very big concern for the government, to control the reproductive rate in India. Hence, there are many contraceptives and there are many, educations that are available so that, people get aware of, means all this health related problems. Now, for that, the health, to control the reproduction rate, there are many contraceptives available in our market. So one is the barrier contraceptive, barrier methods, and these are the best contraceptives because the barrier contraceptives here, we don't take any pill, we don't inject, inject anything inside our body. So this barrier contraceptives comes with condoms. Okay, condoms are used so that the sperms can get trapped inside them and the sperms cannot enter the vagina of the female, which can control the reproductive rate. Even that, there are birth pills used. Birth pills are used. Okay, if the fertilization has, if the sperms has entered the body of the female reproductive organ, they can take this pills. Okay, but the pills are a little risky because it causes allergies for few females. Everyone are not very immune to this pills. They can get allergy. Then next thing is copper tea or loops. Okay, these are available. These are implanted. You can these are usually implanted in the uterus. Okay, this get implanted in the uterus, and this prevents the fertilization or this prevents the embryo implantation. So what happens here is this can be this has this copper present in them, which actually kills the sperms. Okay, with this copper kills the sperm, and then fertilization is prevented. So that copper tea, it is usually implanted for 3 years or 5 years, but sometimes this, because the metal copper is present in them, it causes allergies. Okay, so there's a mechanical method, there is a pills method, then there is implantation method, and then there is surgical method. In surgical method, the tube, that is vas difference, that is cut in males, or in female the fallopian tubes are cut. In males, we call it as tubectomy because the tube is getting, in male, we call it as vasectomy because the vas difference is getting cut. In female, because the fallopian tube is getting cut, we call it as tubectomy. So here what happened, the sperm is produced in the testes, but the sperm cannot go out. The sperm usually get means there's a lifespan for sperm. Okay, 5 days of lifespan is there for sperm. So once the sperm is produced, within 5 days, it just dies off near the testis and it get absorbed by the tissue itself. It don't come out. In female also, when the fallopian tubes are cut, it get absorbed in the ovary itself. Okay, the ovum get absorbed in the ovary itself. So this is the permanent method. Okay, if usually what happens, the people who have 1 or 2 kids, they go for this permanent surgical methods to prevent any unwanted pregnancies. But apart from that, these others are also contraceptives. Okay, these are known as contraceptives. These are to prevent the population growth. Second thing, for reproductive health. Okay, so if unsafe intercourse is being done, there are many STDs caused. Okay, we call that as sexually transmitted diseases like gonorrhea, syphilis, AIDS. These are the sexually transmitted diseases, and these contraceptives helps to prevent all the sexually transmitted diseases. Okay, I think you all have class, so we'll just wind it up now. One question is there, sexual reproduction involve 2 parents of different sex, male and female. which produce male and female gamete respectively. The male and female gametes fuse to form a zygote in sexual reproduction, which develops into a new individual. Is it right or wrong? Which option will be there? A or B or C, D? What will be the option? So the option will be A. Assertion is saying that male and female gametes are produced, and it is said that it is produced so that it can fuse and form a zygote. And we know that we are diploid. So the fusion is very necessary. So the assertion is correct and the reason is also correct. Now, what is placenta? Placenta is the special tissues, okay, which provide nutrients to the growing embryo. Describes its role during pregnancy. What it does, it brings all the essential nutrients required by the embryo, and it takes back all the unwanted nutrients which are not required by the embryo to the mother's body. Okay, it helps to communicate. It acts as a communicating channel. Identify the given diagram, name the part 1 to 5. So this diagram, we know it's a female reproductive structure. 1 will be the fallopian tube, 2 will be ovary, 3rd will be uterus, 4th is cervix, and the 5th is vagina. Now, what is contraception? I told you what is contraception. Contraception is a method to control unwanted, pregnancy. Okay, these are contraceptives. Okay, there are different methods, barrier methods. Okay, there are chemical methods, there are surgical methods. Okay, so 3 advantages. I have told you advantages. 1, birth can be controlled. STDs can be controlled, sexually transmitted diseases can be controlled, and it's very good for reproductive health. Okay, unwanted pregnancies always can cause many problems. Okay, you can avoid unwanted pregnancy by using contraceptive methods. Okay. So is there any question related to this chapter? This chapter was very big. We took a lot of time, and you have another class, I think. So is there any queries you can ask me? I'll give a 5 minutes of time, and then you can join the other class. Is there any query related to this chapter? If there is no queries, you can go and fresh up, and you can be ready for the next class. If there is any query, you can stay here and ask me the question. Now, all the best, students, for your exam. The exams, first term exams are coming ahead. So all the 3 chapters we have discussed. All the best for your exams. Perform well in the exams. And whatever questions we have discussed, whatever diagrams I have told you to revise, just revise those diagrams. Okay, it will be, means you'll be scoring high if you do all this, whatever has been covered in this revision class. So no queries. I'm hoping that there's no queries. No queries has been asked. So you all can just go and fresh up and then join the next class. Okay, have a great evening. Bye, everyone.